Hey guys, so on my recent video on rice that was totally not controversial at all, I'm still kind of amazed at how controversial a video on how, hey, maybe rice isn't the healthiest food, maybe don't eat a ton of it. That's it. Point is, some people commented on that video and mentioned quinoa and said that we shouldn't rely on quinoa as a replacement for rice, not because it's unhealthy, but because it's unethical. The story goes that privileged people like us living in the developed world, that when we buy quinoa, that this actually ends up hurting people in places like Peru, where quinoa is grown. Now, if you know anything at all about economics, this seems like a pretty suspect claim. More money usually means more options for people and less poverty. And people aren't that stupid, like including people in Peru. They don't sell their food to the point that they have nothing to eat. It's also really alarming that the articles that started spreading this myth a few years ago, that the people who wrote these articles, they ignored people in Peru who were saying that Westerners buying quinoa from them was actually helping farmers. Sure, these are anecdotes, but when such anecdotes are in concordance with conventional wisdom and there's no evidence to the contrary, it just doesn't make sense to not take them at their word. So then about a year ago, Marc Bellamare released some research and the findings were pretty clear. The price increase of quinoa helped not only the farmers, but also the poor who did not eat quinoa, and even the middle class who did eat it, but did not grow it. But unfortunately, this myth, like so many others, will just continue to be repeated, in comment sections, on blog posts, and social media, and likely for a long time. There are more plausible concerns though, like for instance, that the increase in the price of quinoa, a very healthy food, that this could be driving the adoption of a less healthy Western diet in places like Peru. Another possible concern, and one that is of particular interest to vegans, while welfare improved, the price of quinoa increased and it climbed above that of alternative protein sources like chicken. So with quinoa costing more and with people having more money to spend, it's very possible that Peruvians reduced quinoa consumption in favor of meat. Luckily, this does not seem to be the case. Agricultural economist Andrew Stevens did an analysis of nutritional concerns and found them to be insignificant. In this paper, I find evidence that tastes for culturally appropriate food exist, but that these tastes have little to no impact on household nutrition in the case of quinoa in Peru. Unfortunately, this westernization is something that already happened decades ago. People in these regions started eating Western diets in the 80s, and so by the time of the quinoa boom, quinoa wasn't even an important staple anymore. So, did our desire for quinoa cause Peruvians to eat more chicken? Maybe. In Peru as a whole, expenditure on chicken increased from 2004 to 2012, but there's no reason to think that this was caused by the small decrease in the already small proportion of quinoa in their diets. But either way, the price of quinoa has long since come back down. This is due to a number of factors, including, larger farms growing it and using modern methods, getting twice the yield, farming broader areas, as well as just other countries growing quinoa. Of course, that's not necessarily anything to celebrate when it comes to the welfare of the poor in Peru and other areas, but only time will tell how their economic well-being stabilizes. And buying more quinoa will only help these people. The bottom line is that there is no reason to think that buying quinoa, that you or I buying quinoa, has any negative effect on human beings. If anything, it may have lifted a generation, at least partially, out of poverty. It also doesn't seem like production has any sort of negative effect on animals, since it doesn't seem like it was ever a question of quinoa or chicken for Peruvians. And in environmental terms, quinoa is a grain with a lot of promise, providing good yields on otherwise poor land. So the enduring effects of expanded quinoa production are probably good in every way. It's a sustainable grain that can be grown in rough conditions with very good nutritional value at a reasonable price. It's pretty great. I wish I liked it more. It's not my favorite grain, I have to say. I can't even remember. I don't even know the last time I ate quinoa. I think I made a casserole thing with it. It's all right. It's just not my favorite, so I tend not to eat it. I think we have a bag of dried quinoa in the cabinet that's been there for like a couple months. Still haven't used it because don't like it that much. I need to find a way to cook it that I really like it, because I tend to just be lazy and like cook some and just like eat it with other things, like kind of as a rice. So if any of you have some like really, really delicious quinoa recipes, let me know. I would like to try some out. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comments or questions, of course, down below. If you want to subscribe, that's awesome. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so at patreon.com/unnaturalvegan. Thanks again. I will have a new video very soon.